Hello, 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 everyone. I am Rosalind Brown of Your Wealth Guidance, where we help Black women create their financial independence map and identify the tools for success so you can live life on your own terms. I want to thank you for joining us today. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another speaker. But what I also want to make sure that you do is share this with a friend, because especially this one is going to be major in terms of the speaker that we have and especially the information and the gems that she's going to drop. So it looks like we're having a bit of issue on Facebook. So if you are our Facebook people, don't worry, we'll fix that. So we'll come back around to you too. So Ashley Hamilton is a dear friend of mine that I recently met, and I was like, yes, like one, this is a story that needs to be told as we start to talk about what is possible. So Ashley is a real estate investor who is also a licensed real estate agent, a certified hard money lender broker. And I know we talked about that before, so we definitely want to get into that and like what it is and what it means. She owns a property management company as well and a project management company. Child, that's a whole bunch of hats. So in 2019, she started a consulting company that helps investors get started investing in real estate and gain access to business and working capital. What sets Ashley apart from her peers is her down to earth personality, her humbleness, her dedication to her children and the youth in her community, and her unique way of breaking down complicated investment strategies in a way that is easy to follow and understand. So this is the meat. So
Yes,
she
that's
started
it.
her investing career as a single mom, supporting her two kids day to day as a waitress, making only $2.65 an hour. In 2009, at age 22, she purchased her first home for only $6,300 using her tax return and made a plan to purchase one property every year using the rental income from the previous properties and her tax return until she acquired 10 homes and to be a millionaire by the age of 30. Child, that is speaking into existence. Like that's the kind of stuff we need to hear. And so today, Ashley has become a self-made millionaire, building real estate investment empire in Detroit, and now she owns over 30 properties with a portfolio over $2 million. Apart from her real estate investments, she's rehabbed over 100 properties. As a project manager, has coached over 400 real estate investors through her master classes, and has directly helped 30 students receive over $2 million in business funding to grow their own business in the first 11 months of starting her company. She shares powerful strategies and lessons she learned to leverage her situation and lay out the steps for them to accomplish similar goals through her Instagram account that has grown organically to over 24,000 followers. So we'll definitely have to drop that Instagram handle in there so y'all can follow her as well. And so I am so happy to have Ashley here because one of the big things is when we talk about what is possible. And so at 22, like what made you say, this is going to be my goal? I'm going to make this thing happen.
Yes, and thank you so much for reading the bio. You did an excellent job. I know it's like super big, so I was grateful that you read the whole thing. It's like long, but you just did it so good. And even though I've accomplished those things, it just sounds so much better coming from you. Like so, like thank you. I feel like that. Like yes, that is me. That's true. Yes. So thank you so much for that. But to be honest, to go back to your question, so at 22 years old, as you all may know, like we're not thinking about buying houses or anything. So it wasn't like, oh, I decided to go buy a house. I had no choice, guys. I was literally 22 with two kids, a single mother, and I was only making 20,000 a year as a waitress. So my rent was only like $700 a month, but that's half of my salary. So you can imagine I didn't have money for like food and vacation. So I had to buy a house. So it wasn't like, okay, if when I had a choice, that was just it. But just a little bit about my story. So I had no education, financial education, no backgrounds in home ownership, business owners, or anything like that. So I didn't really know the good or the bad. So I had heard Warren Buffett, who's somebody I look up to as an investor, say, be greedy when others are fearful and be fearful when others are greedy. So I heard that on a seminar. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I want to use that. And then turn on the radio and I hear everybody saying, don't buy in Detroit. Detroit is horrible. Detroit is a war zone. It's too many, black people, whatever the case may be. And people were saying, don't buy in Detroit. And I'm like, well, I live here and I've been here my whole life and it's not as bad as they think. But maybe this is people being fearful and I should be greedy because I had just heard that quote. So I just started picking up the phone. And when I saw a for sale sign, because in 2008, 2009, they were on every single street, right? It was in the middle of a recession. So I started to pick up the phone and I called them and I asked them, how much are these properties for sale? And when I called one in particular, the agent said it was only $6,300. And that was not a deposit. Like that was it. Like that money and that's it. So I was like, well, because I'm extremely poor and low income, I've never seen more than $1,000 in my account at one time, except for in tax time, right? So, and the good thing is this interview is perfect timing because we all know, even though it's October, I know people that's been waiting on their tax returns since last month.
Already, yeah.
Yeah, so I know around December, that's when like, okay, tax vibes come. So this is a perfect opportunity for you all in this class to know if you're going to receive a tax return, that you can start now on planning what you want to do with it. And when I tell you my journey and how quickly that one tax return retired me, right? And we can talk about, I'll let you, lead it, but I will make sure I talk about it if she doesn't ask that question. But I really want you all to think about this tax return and if you are willing to delay the gratification. So again, I know a lot of us may be trying to purchase a new car or go on this vacation, or you want to buy new furniture for your house. If you can just wait until next year to do those things and use that money to invest it and purchase a property, I guarantee you in 5 years from now, your life will be much, much better and your income will be much, much better. And your opportunities will be as well.
I think that's a good place to start because someone's saying, all right, I'm waiting on his tax return because my car about to break down, whatever else, if the house is messed up, my kids need something. So how do you say, okay, I know I'm going to be able to put this money in there? And we're in the midst of, there is a whole bunch going on in the market. We know we're seeing rates that are crazy. So how do you help someone say, maybe I should make this pivot and change where I'm going to use this tax return money? And then like, how long did it take you to see a return? So you like, hey, I'm spending all my income on rent. How long until you said, okay, this investment made sense?
Absolutely. So the way I will convince people, obviously, is with coaching, like one-on-one coaching, but it's all about our mindset. Because if I'm like poor today, like I've always was, and I never had $1,000. If my car breaks down, then I just have to catch the bus until I can make the money to fix it. So we have to do that mindset shift and make sure that we are only spending money on necessities. Now, if you have 2 kids and their schools are far away and your transportation is mandatory, but again, think about what you would have done if you didn't have that tax return, right? So that's it. And then also, it doesn't have to be the whole tax return, because my tax return was only like 6,000, but these tax returns these days are like 10,000, 12,000. So you can still take 3,000 to spend and splurge on things that you're not supposed to, and still take the rest to invest it. So just a quick tip for anybody, if this is your first home, then let's say if you're going to get a $10,000 tax return, you could probably save as little as $5,000 to use as a down payment. Then you would go with you can go to any bank, but just one that we all may know is Bank of America. They are offering, and if you have, I'm sure you've seen it all on social media, the 0% for Black families and things like that. So that is called an FHA loan, where you can typically put 3.5% down. And what happens is, if you're trying to get like a $200,000 house, that might be 10,000 or 15,000. Well, what Bank of America is doing is they're giving you down payment assistance. So instead of bringing 10 or 15,000, you may not have to bring any of your own money if you qualify for that. But if not, we're going to use that money to either do a subject to deal, which I teach in my community, or we can use that money coupled with hard money to purchase a property, or use that money to get our credit as best as we possible. And then you don't have to use any of your own money. You can use the bank's money if your credit's good. So those would be the 3 tips that I can give you all. And then to add to her second question was, how long did it take me to see a return? So I was so I'm a person, it's so funny when I say this because I have 7 businesses and I work a lot, but I say I'm lazy. And I don't want to say I'm lazy, but I don't like to have to do something, right? I don't like to say, oh, I got to be at work from 9 to 5, or I got to do this. I want to be able to choose. And I know that's so weird. So I knew in order for me to want to be able to choose and have complete time freedom, that I needed to eliminate my job, right? So I needed to quit my job as soon as possible because they were the ones who were controlling me. And I think it's the Leo in me because I'm a lion, right? I'm the leader of the pack. So I had to break free. I did not like the chains. And that might have been the motivation that what got me like, hey, just sacrifice now. It's temporary. So I just needed freedom. So a lot of people will teach you about different real estate strategies, and I love them all. I will try anything once if it works. But if your goal is to quit your job and get your time freedom back, right? Get your control back, you have to be a buy and hold investor. And what that is a landlord, because I'll give you a quick example. If you flip out, so say if I flip 20 houses this year and I make $1 million, right? And I'm like, oh, I retire, I quit, I made $1 million. Yes, that $1 million is going to have to, first of all, be taxed heavily by Uncle Sam, but it's going to have to pay my mortgage, my car note, my insurance, everything. So in 2 or 3 years, depending on how frugal I am, that money is going to be gone. And then I'm going to have to start flipping houses again. If I use that same strategy and I buy 10 rental properties, which I did, and even though I don't have $1 million in profit because I didn't flip those houses, I kept them. So I didn't get the $1 million, and I got, let's say for an example, $400 per property. Now I remember we had 10. So now I have $4,000 a month. Now, as long as my bills are $3,500 a month or $3,900 or below, I never have to work again. Never. And it's just that simple. But not only you have so many other benefits, so you can pay down your tenants are going to pay down your mortgage, and then you can refinance out, take 60, 80,000 out tax free, and live off that for the next 10 years. So that is what I would tell you all if your goal is to retire quickly. Now, if you're like me when I was 22, like I still had a lot of good young years, and I'm only 36, so I still have a lot of good years. So now that I've built that nest egg, now I can flip and make $1 million flipping 10 properties if I want, because that money can support my lifestyle, but I have my nest egg supporting me no matter if all this stuff fails, if that makes sense. And
Yeah,
last, and I know like it's been so much, but I keep forgetting to answer your one question. The question was, so I bought my first house at 22 years old, and at by 27, so that was 5 years, I was 100% retired, financially free. So it took 5 years to see a return.
And see, 5 years sounds like a long time when you're working, but when you're not working. So, and that's one thing. So you're saying at 22, you're still a waitress, you got your one house, and then by 27, you're like, listen, I ain't waiting no more tables.
Yes, absolutely. So, well, and that was I ended up deciding to leave at 27, yeah, but I was still young and wanted to work. So after about 3 years of me being retired, and I'm like, I'm young, and you know what I'm saying? And again, I don't want to confuse it. So I was comfortable. And again, the only reason why, and to make everything so simple was financial independence, is if your expenses are $3,000 a month and you make $4,000 a month, you're financially free, right? So as long as you keep those expenses that down or save a little bit, you can retire. But so that's where I was at 27, where my house, I owned it free and clear. I didn't have a mortgage or car note. So I was generating about $6,000 a month, and I could retire. But I obviously wanted to generate a little more because I had kids that needed to pay for college and things like that. So I decided to return back to work at 30. And then at 33, I officially retired, 100% entrepreneur.
Now, you talk about like the hard money lending. And I know we've mentioned this before, and people are like, what is it? What does it mean? And especially it can be overwhelming as we throw more terminology out there. What exactly is it? And then how does it make sense for someone to do hard money lending versus something else?
Okay, so the easiest way, because in my bio, I'm going to take complicated strategies and break it to you so simple. So the easiest way to think about it is when you go to a traditional bank, Bank of America, they are lending based on you, right? who are you? How do you pay your bills? What's your credit score? What's your income? Right? When you're dealing with hard money lenders or private money lenders, they lend based on the asset, based on the property. So, how much equity is in there? How much rehab does it need? How much can it sell for? How much could it rent for? So, those are things that we can find by using, the MLS. So, it's typically used for people who don't have the best credit score, who don't have proof of income, right? So, if you are a self-employed individual and you write all your expenses off, don't do that. But if you
Don't do that.
are,
We talked about that last week.
right. But we all, I'm not a basher. We've all been there, right? We just need to get educated. But if you are finding yourself where you have written off all of your expenses, and now you don't make any money on paper, that's where hard money lender will help you at. So again, now it's benefits and disadvantages. The only disadvantages typically with hard money is you're going to pay a little bit more because they're asking for less documentation versus if you went to a bank. So again, the bank lends based on you, your personal credit, your income, your history. Hard money lenders, we lend based on the asset and how much profit can be made.
Now you went from, okay, I got one house, I got two houses, I got five houses, and I'm done. And then you branched off and you did 10 other jobs.
Yes,
Now,
yes,
how
yes.
did the branching off go to say, okay, now I'm going to be a project manager. Okay, now I'm going to be a hard money lender. Like, how did you go from one piece to another piece to another piece?
Absolutely. And then to be honest, so I bought one property per year using my tax return for the first like 5 years. And then after that I was able to buy two or three. But I built all the businesses up as I went. And then coaching and consulting was like the last thing that I've added on. So what I did was basically anytime I was faced with a problem or somebody asked me to do something that I was doing for myself to do it for them, that's how it happened. So when I first bought my properties, I didn't know you can hire a property manager, right? So once the house was ready, I'm like, okay, what do I do next? Well, I better find somebody to rent it out to. So I was self-managing it and teaching myself all those skills. So after I got three properties, a investor that was in the real estate office with me was like, I got somebody looking for a property manager and nobody's answering their phone. And then I was like, oh, what's that? And he told me, and I was like, I do that for myself. So he got me on the phone with the client. The client had purchased over 100 properties in Detroit, and he gave
Wow.
me 10, right? So he wanted to be his property manager for 10, but the 10 properties needed to be renovated. So I was like, oh, I got to renovate them too, which I was doing for myself. So that's when I formed a project management company, and that basically does the renovations to bring the property rent ready. And then a property manager, they manage the day-to-day, the phone calls, the leaky toilet. So I built a project management company to rehab their 10 properties. And then once we got them all rehabbed, I transferred them over to my property management company, which I had already built. I just didn't know because I was already doing it. And that was my first client. And that's what got the ball rolling. And once that all went successful, I just remembered the processes and started repeating it for clients all over the world.
Oh, wow. Now, there's a whole bunch of folks that are like, yeah, real estate sounds fun, but I don't ever want to have tenants. And if you've had one bad tenant, maybe I don't want to have another tenant. So for the people who are like, I don't know if I want to be a landlord, I don't know if I want to get the call about the leaky toilet, does it still make sense for them to have rental properties?
Absolutely, because I'm a property manager too. Yeah, that's why I do it too. So because it's not that, so we think we don't want to because we've heard the bad things. But if you first of all get coached properly, then you won't have those problems. But if you're like, I don't have time to invest in coaching, I want the benefits and I just don't want to do it. Absolutely, just buy a property and have a property manager. So because you already know that that's something you don't want to do, the first thing I would do is reach out to a great property manager in that area. If it's in Detroit, I got you. But if it's not, I would find the best property manager in that area first, talk to them, see how it goes. And then if you like them and feel confident in their ability to manage the properties, then you can purchase it and hand it off to them. And then now you just collect money every month.
Now, you're in Detroit. I know your shirt says I'm a Detroit investor. So if you are in a DC like me and you ain't getting nothing for $6,300, does it make sense for people to look outside of their home city to say, okay, I might be able to afford something in this city even though I couldn't afford a parking spot in DC for that. Like, does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's what I tell a lot of people. So a lot of people always say like, oh, well, it's easy for you because you were in Detroit and homes are so cheap. But not really, because you in other states you get mortgages, right? So we have to buy a lot of stuff cash here. So typically you're getting it for 10% off. So it still could work in an expensive market like yours. And how I break that down with my calculator is you will have to get some down payment assistance, obviously, and you will have to like have good credit and have a good income, but you can get a rental property probably for about 60,000 out of pocket there, and that will be leveraging like getting your property is probably like 600,000 right out there, getting the FHA 3.5, then coupling that with some down payment assistance. But if that's still out of reach to you, then yes, absolutely go into a different market. And the reason I say that is because we, especially as African Americans, we are behind within a wealth gap, right? And home ownership is the one thing that you can buy now and it will always be beneficial. It's something that you can hold, that you can pass down, right, to your kids. These cars, these vehicles, these iPhones, we can't pass that stuff down to our kids. So that is why we need at least one property. So if you are a person that can come up with the 60,000 or whatever, or afford a coach or a mentor like myself, I can work with you one-on-one and help you achieve this in your own backyard. However, if you are a person that don't have a ton of money and you want to get in, then absolutely you can buy in other markets. Because me personally, I don't work with people locally here. I'll help them, like give them resources, but I only work for out-of-state investors. And I've helped probably 26 investors buy properties in Detroit my whole since the 13 years I've been doing it. So that's typically what I do. And it's all about finding somebody you can trust. But like I said, either way, I can coach you on how to do it, even if it's not in Detroit, or if it's in Detroit, my companies can do it for you. But again, it will be up to you. But it's always good to look in other markets if you can't afford your market, right? So let's not use that as a reason not to do it, not to take advantage. There's going to be some amazing opportunities coming up. We're switching into a seller's market. So, a buyer's market. Yes, we're switching into a buyer's market. We just came from a seller's market. So there's going to be some great opportunities. And again, if you want this, educate yourself a little bit. And again, if you like the way I teach, I do offer classes for that. And I'll, make sure I send it to Rosalind and she can send it out to you all, because I'm truly here to help. But whenever you do, if not, just find somebody that you can actually see receipts though, right? So some people, they'll talk about it, and I'm the queen of receipts. So on my Instagram, one of the major achievements I did was I purchased 11 houses in 1 year during COVID. Like I just went crazy. Yeah. So that was from 2019 to 2020. I purchased 11 properties. But through that year, that I had created my Instagram page, because before I didn't do it. So those 11 properties, like I have literally showed my audience day 1, day 2, all the way up until like somebody moving in. So those are the receipts. And I still do it daily now. I only have 7 projects that I'm working on now, but I show those as well. So that's me like ensuring you that, hey, this is, if you're going to, go with me as coaching, you can see that I'm really physically doing it. I didn't do this 10 years ago, and now I'm trying to teach y'all the old way. I'm out here doing it today. I just left a property today.
Now, that's a really big thing, because if you're just getting started, I remember looking at my first few houses, and you walk in and you like, oh, okay, this is nasty. The carpet nasty. It's some holes in the wall. You probably see a few dead bugs, stuff like that. And so how do you know if a house is too much, or if it makes sense that, okay, this is a house that needs a little bit of rehab, but I can make it work? I think, especially if you're just getting started. When I was walking in some of those houses.
Yes.
Like,
so the crazy thing is, yes, when I walk in houses, people be like running out the door, like, oh my God, no, the kitchen. I'm like, yes, the kitchen's falling apart. Yes, there's a hole in the wall. Yes, because I know as a rehabber that's the best way to get the most money out of a property. But I understand as someone new, it can be scary. So first of all, it depends on what your goals are. So if you're in a property and they're asking, let's say $50,000 for it, that's the sale price. Again, I know it's different in some markets, but let's say for an example, and you're walking in and you see the dead bugs and it needs some work. But if you know, based on your agent or the research that I can teach you how to do, that it could sell for 200,000, then you might say, wow, I don't mind putting 100,000 in work or whatever, because I'm going to get $50,000 out of this thing, or I'm going to be able to rent it out for 2,000 a month, and that's going to put an extra $1,000 a month in my pocket. So again, the best way, and I don't want to sound salesy because I know, and I'm not that person. I truly want to be used by people who need me. But to be so I'm not saying like you have to do this, but the best way to do it is find someone that's doing it like myself. And I offer different ways and different levels to coach you. If not, you could start looking on YouTube. I have made it a priority to start doing more on YouTube versus Instagram. However, it is going to take a little longer, and you just have to be careful because sometimes there's I don't know what this is. So sometimes you have to go back and like there's constants. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm just losing a blank for words. But like I might say, oh, I bought this house for $3,000 and I rent it out for $3,000, right? So if you hear that on YouTube, you're like, wow, I can do that. But you don't know well, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, the background of it, where I had to put 60,000 into it and somebody moved in and they were squatters and I had to call the police, right? So, but I'm not going to say that because I might got a 3 minutes to get your attention on YouTube. So that's the only flaw when you're trying to do it yourself on YouTube, that you sometimes need to hear the backstory and exactly how. So that's why I don't want you all looking at YouTube and just like literally letting that be your education. But you might need to use that so that you can get a skill so that you can, get enough to book a call if possible or hire a mentor, if that makes sense.
Now, I think that's a good point in terms of just trying to find out who you should work with and kind of what those next steps are. But if someone is saying, okay, how do I find a realtor? Because not all realtors are great for rental property. And so what are some of the questions people should be asking? So if you're in whatever market and you say, okay, I'm gonna find a realtor, and some realtors are first-time homebuyer realtors.
Yes.
Some are high-end realtors. Those are the people like on Netflix, I'm not in that route.
Right.
But so you're interviewing a realtor and you're trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to be an investor. How do I know I am working with a realtor that knows investing?
Investor friendly realtors. So just like you said, like first time home buyers. So, and if you don't want it to be obvious when you are interviewing them, you would just say, hey, so do you own any investment properties, or do you have any clients that own any investment properties? So that would be a great way. And that's true. And I was just going to say that. So I didn't realize, because I'm a real estate agent, but I work from home, like my own office. I just pay a monthly fee. So I don't go in with the other agents. And it's because I've been doing it for so long. So I didn't realize that there are a lot of agents that's telling people like, oh, don't buy in Detroit, or they're advising people, oh, you shouldn't buy that property. It's not going to make any money. And they don't own properties. So I do see that is very important that you ask that question, and for your audience to make sure that when you do decide that to work with a realtor, that they know what you're trying to do and that they've worked with clients before. And again, it wouldn't be like, hey, are you investor friendly? Because of course they're going to say, oh yeah, right. Or have you invested personally? And to be honest, if you can pick 10 and interview them, and some are physically, they own rentals, that might be the one you want to go with. But if they don't physically own rentals, then you want to know, have they worked with clients that do, and how did that go? Like, are you still doing it? What all services do you help them with? But that's the realtor you want to go to, because those are the ones that's going to know what you want. Something like myself, I'm an investor friendly realtor. So I know exactly what kind of deals you want and the way to go after it and how to look at it as well.
Now, what are some of the mistakes that people typically make when you're just getting started? I remember my first house and I was like, I want something with these kind of floors and this kind of backyard. I'm like, that smells, that one looks funny. So a lot of times we're thinking very emotional and not strategic, but what are some of the other mistakes that people make when they're just getting started?
Absolutely. So that's typically the biggest one. I feel like people, obviously, when we look at home ownership, and it depends, but if we're looking at it as an investor, we have to know that this might be short term. It isn't the only, you might sell it eventually. So if you make a mistake or you end up not liking the house, you can always sell it, because it's, it could be short term. So that's one thing to know. Like, it's not like the only option you'll ever have. But another thing I would think is going in for the wrong reasons. not buying properties that align with their goals. So, again, if you want to quit your job, if you're looking for flips, then, you're never going to quit. So that's a way, like being clear with your goals. You can know, like, okay, I want to quit my job in 5 years. I currently make $3,000 a month at my job. So as soon as I can replace that $3,000 a month with rental income, I'm out, right? So now we can build you a plan to strategically buy rental properties. And because you want to depend heavily on that, you want to find longevity, right? Neighborhoods that are going to stand the test of time. So that would be another big mistake. I feel like some investors, especially here in Detroit, because we get a lot of press about having properties for $1,000 at our land bank. So that attracts a lot of people. And their mistake is they're just thinking about the price, $1,000. Oh, I can get that. But they're not realizing that it's going to cost an additional $80,000 to fix it up. And you got only 6 months, and you got people breathing down your back, and it could be, and the jobs, the repairs are way worse. So those would be a couple mistakes. So not investing in properties that are aligned with your goals, buying properties because they're very cheap and ignoring other factors. And another mistake, I would just say not seeking mentorship. And again, it doesn't have to be as complicated, because I'm a person who struggle to find mentorship, but it doesn't have to be as complicated. Typically, they're not going to be the people with 100,000 followers. They're going to be the people that you can see that's actually doing it. And you'll be surprised reaching out to people on social, like, or even on YouTube. If you're seeing something they're doing, asking them, do they offer mentorship, or, figure out how you can serve them. And then you can end up getting a free mentorship. So there's so many different ways, but those will be the mistakes I feel people make in the beginning.
I love that. And it's like you see something like this and you're like, I can do it.
Yes.
You're like, it took you 5 years, I can do it in 3. And then all of a sudden they make a mistake. And some of those mistakes can be pretty doggone costly. I mean, if you actually need 80,000, but you came to the table with 2.
Right. Yeah. See, that's what it is. Yeah. And a 5-minute phone call with me could have saved all the problems, because I would have been able to tell you, like, no, don't do it. Unless you know what you're getting into, for sure. And people did that. And to be honest, that's the duplex that I just said that I bought for 3,000. A lady, I think she only paid about 5,000 to 7,000 for it, maybe 8. But she did that. She bought it and thought it was going to be a piece of cake and couldn't afford it. And it just went crazy, and she couldn't sell it. So she was like, what would you give to me? And honestly, I gave her 3,000 because I felt bad, because it really wasn't even worth that. But I didn't, I wanted to be helpful. So it's definitely different. Now, the reason I can do it, because I'm an experienced investor and I've done hundreds of rehabs, and I'm okay with waiting, right? So I'm not a person that, as soon as I put let's say I spend 60,000 on a property, and I need it back in 3 months, or else everything's going to fall apart. I'm okay with putting the 60,000 in there and receiving 1,000 back a month in cash flow, to get my money back. So that was why. And then I have the experience to get the rehab done.
See, that makes a big difference. Now,
Yeah.
one of the things too, and we're talking about the difference between flip versus buy and hold. I think if you were watching all the HGTV back in the day, like I was, you like, I can flip over 2 weeks.
Yes.
If I do this every 2 weeks, I'm making $100,000 every 2 weeks. Now, for those who have either made that mistake or saying, I don't want to be a landlord, I just want to flip houses, what would you say to them in terms of the biggest difference, and kind of maybe even guidance in terms of how realistic is it to, flip in a weekend?
Absolutely. So flipping is definitely way harder than it seems, especially from the TV shows. Now, it definitely can be lucrative, but I can just give you the averages, and these are for experienced investors. So if you're new, I would say probably want to add almost double the time. But let's say, again, now I'm not opposed to flipping, especially if you're in the flipping market, right? But again, just to think that it's easy is definitely isn't the easiest thing to do. And if it's easy, it's probably not going to be worth it, right? Because everybody's doing it. But so number one, on average, and this is like nationwide, the profit is typically $60,000 for a flip. So even if you're finding somebody that's, they bought the house for 200,000, they put 100,000 into it, and now it's worth 400,000, or whatever the case may be. They do have lender fees, holding costs, their time. We always forget about budgeting our time, right? So on average, the profit from a flip is $60,000, and it typically takes 4 months to do for an experienced investor. Right now, depending on what state you are, your permits, some like California, it takes sometimes 18 months to get a permit. And when those shows are all in California, those guys know the city workers. They know them. They give them their permits early. They know they're doing a TV show. So that is not as easy as it seems. So realistically, experienced investors, 4 months, $60,000. But that's the profit and what they show on the shows, right? They do not say that come April, Uncle Sam is going to want his money, because we can't forget about our favorite Uncle Sam. And when you sell a property in less than 1 year, you experience something called short-term capital gains, which is taxed at a higher rate. If you keep it for over a year and sell it a year and 1 day, then you get long-term capital gains, which is a little bit longer. But remember, the flips are only taking 4 months. So now we're experiencing short-term capital gains, which is a minimum of 30%. So out of that $60,000 profit, you done went and bought Louis Chanel purse, and you done went to Bora Bora, right? With the whole
and that's
family.
all your money.
And y'all eating good, right? All summer. And then April come, and now Uncle Sam knocking, that 60,000 was 20,000, and that was mine, because I needed my 30%, and you don't have it because you just spent it or whatever. And that's where problems happen, right? So that's, and again, I'm not saying it's not right, because at the end of the day, you're still making 40,000 profit. And if you took you only 4 months, 40,000 in 4 months is great. So I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm just saying the shows are there to, they're not really accurate depicting. And again, if you are somebody that loves your job and you don't mind working, you're a younger individual that got 10 or 20 years to build wealth, absolutely. But I can pull up an email right now from Tariq Al-Muso, the guy who's on Flip This House on HGTV. That's one of the biggest shows. That's my favorite show. I'm sorry, it's Flip or Flop. And he's coaching now, because flipping is not a means to an end. You will never be able to sustain yourself unless you use the profits and invest in the stock or something else. But if you're just a flipper, you're never going to be able to stop working. So most people flip a lot and then start coaching, and that's fine, but coaching is still working. So again, if you want to be lazy like me, even though I know I'm not lazy, but I truly have time freedom, where if I have 20 things on my schedule tomorrow and say, hey, I ain't doing it, then I don't have to, right? And if that's what you want to do, then flipping isn't the best thing. But if you want to flip 1 or 2 properties to get started, it's totally up to you. I would just suggest you reach out to somebody like myself, you know, to explain and make sure that your goals and lifestyle aligns with that. Because again, that's saying like you're doing the work, right? So even though, like, you know, the host, when you're flipping the house, like the contractors they're doing the work, but you have to know what you want, right? So what if you don't know what you want? Or what if they're asking like, okay, what size vanity are you putting in? 24-inch, 30-inch, 36? You're like, hold on. So you're still going to need to invest into coaching so you can know those things. And that's what I would say. So if you want to just truly be a flipper, you know, find a coach that's flipping, maybe book a call, have a consultation, and get started. It's not a bad thing to do. Again, I'm not saying it's bad, but just want to figure out what your lifestyle goals are. And that will help you determine if you want to, you know, flip, or you can do both, you know.
And I think that's once you talked about what is your goal in terms of real estate, because some people are like, this is my avenue to get to financial independence. Well, if that's the case, probably not gonna happen with flipping,
right? Because you're gonna still work and find a way.
Especially as the markets change. So if you were flipping a couple years ago, life might have been grand, but you got to turn, and now you're gonna have to offer people closing costs.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a buyer's market now. So if you bought that house in last like 6 months ago, before interest rates went up, and you probably paid $10,000 more because you knew it could sell for, you know, 400,000, but now you can't sell it at 400,000, and it's not because it's not worth it, because the values haven't went down yet as far, but it's because the interest rates are so high, people can't afford it, right? A 2% interest increase, you know, is a difference of almost $200 to $300 per month. So if you were getting a property and your monthly mortgage was $900, and because the interest rates increased and now it's $1,400, you know, that might be a a big deterrent or a reason you can't qualify now. And now that property, they have to reduce the price. So it is dangerous. Again, I'm not trying to scare you off from flipping. It's just something that you cannot go into lightly, because if you're in the middle of a market shift and you get caught paying too much and now you can't sell, now you're jeopardizing your own personal finances. And that's what happens a lot with flips. And I'm not saying, it's like, well, okay, like for example, in a business, if your business go down, you might, okay, I lost the business, I filed bankruptcy or whatever, but you still get to keep your house. But when you're like flipping, a lot of times we'll try to take money out of our own savings because we're believing in it. And then if we put a lot of money into it, we'll max out our credit cards because we know we can sell it. And then if the market shifts and we can't sell it, again, it could be detrimental, where it's something like you can't just be done with the house because now you got to go back and pay all the debt that you accumulated. So it's definitely possible. I definitely want to talk about the good sides of it, but you just want to be educated for sure.
Now, you talked about interest rates, and I think I saw this morning 30-year is at 7% today. And so I keep telling folks, I'm like, 7% sounds high. My first mortgage was 6.25, and that was a good mortgage. Like,
yes,
it was good. So then when I got a 3% mortgage, I was like, oh, that thing
really good. Yes. Yes.
So we're not that far from where I was with my first property, but I think it is a shock. So if in the last few years you've been seeing 3%, 4%, and now we're at 7%, and people are like, well, I don't know if I can afford a rental property. Is this still a time to buy rentals?
Yeah, absolutely. Because first of all, I typically, like, my strategy personally is to try to keep your debt side very, very low. So that really doesn't affect us, the interest rate, because the income is going to pay your mortgage from your tenants. So it definitely is. And all it is a numbers game, right? So yes, even though interest rates have increased, what else have increased? And this is going to tell you why it's not a good time for flipping. Rents have increased, right? So one of my properties, I rented it out for $950. And then the lady moved out after her year was up. That's fine. The next year I rented that same property out, same everything, just cleaned it up because I had already did a rehab. I rented that out for $1,400. And now rents are even $600. So that's another thing. Inflation is going up. Rents are going up as well. So that's why I love being a landlord, because the interest rates aren't affecting me, because, okay, when it's time for a lease renewal, I'll just increase the rents because everything is going up. Like if gas is going up, food is going up. You can't get mad at your landlord for going up. We're just human, just like you, So that's a good way to why interest rates typically don't affect us. And again, once you decide to purchase a property, you're going to be able to do the math. So like, okay, this is the income, this is the expenses. You'll factor in the interest rate because it'll be in your mortgage payment. And as long as you can still profit 300 or more, it's still a good deal, because that's a good way to not like depend or have to worry. And like, the more I think about it, it's like, I just did the easiest form of investing. Like, I want to try to be recession proof, interest rate hike proof, unemployment proof, like all of that stuff. Like, and yeah, and I've been able to do that with real estate.
Now, I know one of the main reasons that people are like, I want to be a landlord is because of tenants. Mm-hmm. And if you've ever had a bad tenant, you will be like, I'm gonna sit back. I'm just
yes.
And especially we are coming out of some of the COVID restrictions to even having non-paying tenants. Mm-hmm. And they were like, no, you got to keep them people. No, you can't kick those folks out. And depending on where you are, courts are so backed up. There are people that are still battling that. Now, how do you kind of prevent being stuck with problem or bad tenants?
All right, these are going to be some crazy things. It's going to blow your mind because it's probably never going to think about it. But one way to mitigate that, obviously, is Section 8. So during COVID, a lot of my landlords did not lose a dime because Section 8 was paying their rent, and maybe the tenant was responsible for 100, 200, and they were okay with that, right? They just let them keep that because they didn't lose. So that's one way, using Section 8. But the way I avoid tenant defaults is over improving my house just a little bit, and a price. And because I over improve it just a little bit. So for example, you can go to Home Depot and get countertops for maybe, if you install it, material, all that stuff. Say you're out of $1,000, right? For a countertop. I'll go and put granite in there, and I'm not telling everybody to do that. And I may pay an extra $1,500 a month. I mean, $1,500 for the granite. So I spend $2,500, right? And again, these are just numbers. So most investors are not going to spend the extra $1,500, right? Because they're looking at it as a big expense. But what that does for me, that allows me to charge $150 more per month, right? So I'm going to make that $1,500 back because I'm charging more. So if I could charge $1,000 without granite, because I'm the only house in the area with granite, I can charge $1,100, right? So that $100 in 15 months, I'll have all my money back for that, plus the rest of the tenant term, I'll be able to enjoy that extra $100. But that also eliminates a lot of the bad tenants, because one of the biggest requirements for me is that you make 3 times the rent and income. So if my houses are priced very, very high of that market, let's say 1,100 in that example, but they're way more than that now. The individual will have to make at least 3,300 a month, which is 40,000 a year. So that's not somebody that don't pay their bills typically, and especially in Detroit, because that's a good income for Detroit. Because I know now, and with inflation, it won't be in a minute. But what I'm saying is, their income, that's not somebody that's just getting welfare and don't care because they're getting everything handed to them. It's somebody that actually has to work to make that income, and they're going to actually care about where they live. And again, most of the people here are single mothers or small families. So a lot of them, again, they're working individuals. They're making 3 times the rent. They have kids. So those are people who typically don't want to lose their house because they're not going to have anywhere for their kids to go. Especially, a lot of reasons why people don't like to leave my house is because their family members brag so much and want to come over there because they feel good to show it off, right? So if your house is the nicest house on the block in that neighborhood, you're going to want everybody to come and see it. So those are some of the things that I do and what makes my tenants stay longer and pay and don't tear it up. Another way you're going to have to do that is screening your tenants and just picking up on red flags. We get those feelings. Sometimes we try to be nice and helpful, but a lot of times where I picked wrong people, there was red flags that I missed. And then lastly, if you can pick, I would look at states that are landlord friendly. So Michigan is a landlord friendly state, meaning that you literally have 30 days and that's it. Our evictions were 45 days before COVID. Now they're about 5 months, but that's because of COVID. And once the courts, get back together, we'll be back at 45 days. So that would be another thing, picking a state that's more tenant friendly so that even if you make a bad mistake, you can get them out, or over improving it just a little bit if you have the funds, where that way you can charge higher to eliminate some of the riffraff because they won't be able to qualify.
See, that's a very big deal. Oh my goodness. The difference between tenant friendly and landlord friendly states. It's crazy because I was telling someone, I said, actually, in landlord or in tenant friendly states, sometimes the criteria is even more strict because you know for a fact, I can't get this person out for 10 years.
Yes.
It might take a full, in DC right now, I think we are almost at a year. It does mean that I can't make no exceptions.
Yeah.
If you are 2.9% of the amount of, I can't make that exception. If you have one ding on your credit, I can't make that exception because I might be stuck with you that much longer. So I think that's very big. Just kind of just going through, okay, well, what is there? What kind of difference? So I think that's a really big deal as you're just trying to find those tenants. Now, in terms of marketing, what are you doing to market and say, all right, I got all these rentals. Where do we find these people?
Absolutely. So if you're saying when I have a property available for rent, where do I market? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I typically, and I'm just saying what I do personally. So I don't typically have to market as much because everything I do is it just all brings people to me. So because when somebody have a barbecue, one of my tenants have a family reunion or a barbecue, I know because all of their cousins are calling me, asking me, oh, I want to rent a house from your landlord. So a lot of stuff, I'm a different landlord. So a lot of stuff that we as landlords try not to do, it's really hurting us. And we're thinking we're saving money, but it's really hurting us. So what I mean by that is we don't want to put granite in our rentals because they're just a rental property. They're just going to tear it up anyway. We sometimes, and I'm not saying sometimes, and definitely not, because some of us do want to fix our properties up, but a lot of us say, well, what's the cheapest option? What can we do cheapest? Always trying to save. And eventually that hurts them. So because my properties, I look at it the opposite way and I want to spend as much as possible up front so that I can charge a higher rent. But also when people come over, their family members, they want to rent for me. So, but that took time. Obviously, I've been doing this for 13 years. So if you're new, I use Zillow. And I still use them to this day as well, especially now that I'm trying to get more Section 8 people, or at least want them to see it as well versus just getting the referral. So I use Zillow. To me, that's the number one. They have when you list your property with Zillow, it goes to a lot of other rental sites. So it's like one and done. And then how I sell it is with the photos of the good repairs that I made. That's what's going to get it marketed every time. I literally have never had a property sit on the market for longer than 30 days. Unless we were waiting on inspection for Section 8. Now when I'm doing Section 8, it does take a little longer, but like it'll be occupied the first week or two, but we just have to wait to do paperwork and inspections. I mean, it'll be off the market in the first week, but we just have to wait maybe to get the inspection. So it does take a little longer with Section 8, but once they're in there, they're typically in there for a good amount of time.
Now, for folks who are like, oh, Section 8 does sound nice. It does sound like a secure way to keep getting money. What are the requirements and how are those different? So you mentioned the Section 8 inspection, those kind of things. What makes that tenant different than a tenant that you just kind of get that walks off the street?
Right, absolutely. So as far as a landlord, it's more paperwork. Absolutely. It's an inspection. You have somebody like looking over your head and double checking. So that would be like a downside or the difference. But to be honest, so now at first I didn't have Section 8 tenants. I had all cash paying. But since COVID, I decided to look more into it. But I still have it open for whoever the best qualifying person. So I just priced it at Section 8's maximum. And that's typically what's going to get me the Section 8 tenant. But you said what's the qualification? So the tenant would already be on the program. And another way to get in front of those people is I'm a preferred landlord. So once I started passing all of my inspections, the Section 8 lady was like, well, how's your house is passing on the first time? Is it okay if I put you on my list? And if, it's for people to call and see if you have anything. So that was the way that I get Section 8. But in order for you to qualify, your property just has to be desirable by a Section 8 tenant. So somebody that receives Section 8 wants to move there, and then you just have to pass the inspection. There's no requirements that you as a landlord should have already, but you can have back taxes. So your taxes has to be paid up, has to be city certified, can't have any like blights or tickets. You just have to have the deed and, make sure the utilities are paid. But again, it's all the stuff that you should already do as a landlord. So it's just as simple as passing the inspection and your house will be certified for Section 8.
I love it. Now, I know we got just a few more minutes. So definitely if you have any more questions, I know a few people are like buy and hold. Definitely. I've done construction a few times and I'm like, I need space between.
Yeah.
I need space. Could not imagine being in that kind of like heightened cortisol stress.
Yes.
During a flip process. But let's say someone is watching this today and they're saying, all right, I am going to own something, maybe not by the end of the year, but let's say maybe like in the next 6 months. What are some of the top 2 or 3 things that they need to do today in order to make that happen?
Absolutely. So number one, seek mentorship if it's affordable to you and you have access, which you do because me and Rosalind both are here. Number 2, just make sure you can clean up your credit the best that you can. And the biggest thing I love about credit and bad credit is that it's repairable, right? So we're 6 months to a year from having perfect credit. So if that's someone like if that's the only thing you're struggling with your credit, so use that 6 months to just perfect your credit. Make sure you try to remove all negatives, try to negotiate, making sure you're paying things on time, eliminating some of your debt. That's going to be the biggest thing, because if you have a great credit score, most of my students that I teach them how to get that credit score, and then they are funding these deals 100% with other people's money. So you don't have to have money. You just have to have the good credit score. So the biggest steps that I can give you if you would like to purchase a property in the next 6 months would be to get your credit report and perfect it, make it perfect as possible, seek mentorship, and then start attending local meetups if you can, or set out, let's see. Okay, everybody, we have 30 minutes a week, right? We can all find 30 minutes a week. So if you guys can go into your calendar right now and schedule each week for the next 5 months, 6 months, right? 30 minutes per week. So if your day, where do you have a free day or get off early or the kids don't have practice or whatever, if that's typically Wednesday, okay, cool. Wednesday from 4:30 to 5:30, I'm going to just watch a podcast. I'm going to go look at YouTube. I'm going to, watch Instagram, watch Reels, TikTok, but only for real estate things, right? Maybe I'll follow some flippers. Maybe I'll follow some landlords. Whatever it is, as long as that you're taking that 30 minutes each week. And again, we can give ourselves 30 minutes to move forward with real estate. You will be enlightened so much. And in 6 months, you'll be ready to do this. Again, you don't have to wait that long. I would just say a lot of it maybe just a quick call with someone like myself. And you can start right away. It just depends on your goals and your situation.
Now, in terms of real estate versus the stock market, so I know a bunch of people are like, I don't know, maybe I should do one versus the other. What are your thoughts in terms of one versus the other or a mix of the two?
Yeah, so I believe I'm a strong believer in multiple streams of income because when one is down, the other can be picking you up, just like stock and real estate right now. However, if I had to choose, it's all real estate. Me personally, I only have less than like $5,000 in stock, and that's because I'm learning. And it just I'm not ready to dig into that yet. But so that's what my suggestion would be. And the reason why is because when I coming from where I come from and my background, and I'm not going to say this because a lot of people are like this, but just somebody that's extremely, in poverty, obviously no generational wealth. I want to break generational curses and I want to have something that I can see, feel, touch, and I can pass down to my kids. And I don't know if you can pass down stock, but I know that's why I choose real estate because it's tangible. And another thing is that they're not making any more land, right? And so and everybody needs housing, right? So that's another thing. There's being more people born than houses built every year. So that's it's always going to be something in demand. And then again, because I want to use this as a wealth strategy and to teach it to my kids and my grandkids. So when I bought my first house, like my kids, even though we weren't doing the work, like my daughter was helping me change the locks. My son was holding the flashlight at 3 and 5. Now to this day, every single house, we'll have like an $800 budget for like a blinds, smoke detectors, and doorknobs. And we do that ourselves. My daughter on the blinds, my son is on the smoke detector because he's super tall, and doorknobs, and I'm there just cussing everybody out. No, I'm just joking. But and that's so it's building memory. It's like building memories, right? My kids see me dealing with tenants. They see me with people, who have small kids and being nice to them. And they see it the other way too, but they see every day I still do it and they see the lifestyle they have. So that's what's really important, guys. A lot of times we want to think about how can we make the most money? How can we quit our job? And that's great. But if we have kids or people under us, they are truly watching and they really need it more than anybody, especially right now with the way when I put on the news, just breaks my heart younger and younger because I'm very passionate about kids and children and just trying to give them that just innocent childhood. That's it. Like once you're 18, typically some of these kids after they're 14, I'd be like, get away from me. But no, but I just really want them to have like an innocent childhood where they don't have to be stressed. And unfortunately, it's not like that. Social media. So I feel like if we can all just buy one property, right? We can at least have that one thing to pass down to our kids to leave a legacy. Your kids can actually go in there and fix things. They can learn skills, and it'll just be a better situation for your kids to come into at the end, if that makes sense. And it's just the way to go for sure.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I sometimes I get long-winded because I try not to talk so much, and I would just say like one of the pillars that I had set out for my kids is that I want them to have 4 things when they became adults at 18 so that they can have an advantage instead of a disadvantage. So the goal was for my kids to have their college debt paid off completely, so they don't graduate college with no debt, to have a 750 credit score, to have a vehicle free and clear, and to start a business, right? So those four things, and they don't have to make money in it. They can go work at McDonald's, but I wanted to give them those four things by the time they were 18. And I was able to do that with just one rental property for each one of my kids. So if you don't want to be a crazy person like me and own 35 properties, you might just have two kids and you might just want to do two, right? And it may not be for your own self. You might love your job, but those two properties, you could use that income to help send your kids to school debt free. You can buy it when they're young, and by the time, because the mortgage is 30 years, you'll have to like say you can do a 15-year mortgage, right? You buy one property on a 15-year mortgage. The tenant is paying that mortgage down, not you. And then say your kid is 3, in 15 years, they'll be 18. Then you can refinance that property and it'll be worth, even if it's worth 50,000, you can use that for their college. And again, anytime you refinance is tax free, right? So you don't pay taxes on it. And then they still own the property, right? So just with one property, you guys can do that for your kids. And again, even if my kids work at McDonald's, that's on them. I'm not pressuring them to do it, but I feel good as a parent knowing that one property, I set my kid up with an advantage versus me who came in with no credit, already a single mother, already a teenager mother, no education and no income. I came in with an extreme disadvantage. So that will be the way I believe it, I guess. If that's something that's in your heart, your goals, if you have children, it doesn't have to be 100. It could be 2 or 3. It doesn't have to be, just make it what you want it. And that's what I love about real estate. You can truly do it the way you want and the way it fits your lifestyle and your goals. And you don't have to have skills or knowledge.
Yeah, and I think that's big. And especially you talked about $400. I mean, at 18, for an extra $400, like
Yes,
that would have been huge. So
absolutely.
even if you aren't able to send them off, even if you aren't able to pay off their college, just the fact that they can eat or
Yes.
buy their books
And
or
stay out of your pocket.
exactly. So even just those small things can make a huge difference. Now, I usually end with this question about what do you see your life with financial independence? Like, how does that? But you're there. So I think one of the bigger things is what is next for you? Like, what's the next big vision that you have?
Oh my gosh. So it's so funny because I've been trying to figure that out. So I have no clue, but I will tell you. So again, we didn't talk about this, but because because I had kids early on, I actually finished early. So even though I'm young, I'm 36 years old today. My son graduates high school and I will be an empty nester, right? And my daughter, she went to college last year and she had those 4 pillars. She has her own business, her 750 credit score. She has her college paid off in full, and she has a vehicle that she owns free and clear. So my son is already set up for that as well. So now it's like I can actually not saying live for myself, but now I can actually experience all the hard work I did, and it actually came into fruition. So I'm excited to see what's next for me. But I know right now my main focus is trying to help as many people as possible, especially people that look like me and come from where I come from. And I'm not necessarily saying, obviously a lot of Black women like myself, it will be a lot of Black women, but you may not be Black, you may not be African American, and you may just didn't have an advantage in life, right? So if you didn't have a rich Uncle Phil in Beverly Hills that you can borrow 100,000 for, or if you can get it from your parents, then you are like me, right? Somebody that truly have to do it on their own, who didn't hit the lottery. Then that's where I want to speak to people like that and try to help them. So that's what's going to be this year. Just getting myself out there more to try to help and give back as much as possible. And I want to start a YouTube channel. So
Yay! We're gonna follow you. You got to let us know when you get that started.
Yeah.
And then how can people reach you? So somebody saying, all right, I want a mentor. All right, I want you to buy me a house somewhere in Detroit. I'm gonna send you my tax return. So how do they get in contact with you for that?
Absolutely. So the easiest, quickest way, and I answer all my messages, is Instagram. And that's Detroit_investor. So just like it is on the screen, Detroit_investor. And I do have a website. It's at www.Ashley Hamilton Consults. So it's just my name, Ashley Hamilton Consults tenant.com, and that's the best way to reach me. I do answer DMs, and then also you can click the link in my bio for my upcoming trainings and stuff, and that's the best way.
I love it. So I just dropped that in the chat so y'all can go ahead and follow her now, Detroit_investor and Ashley Hamilton Consults. So make sure that this is the last year that you
Yes.
don't have passive income. So even if you start from something small or make that sacrifice of, all right, we go eat some ramen, we're going to live in the small place so we can have a much more cushioned life going forward. So let's make that happen. Let's make that a goal for ourselves. And hopefully you all got the message, because we're going to do a little accountability group starting in November. So if you are not on the mailing list, be sure to reach out and make sure you click on the link so you can be on the mailing list. And then until then, I want you all to have a great night. Thank you so much, Ashley.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.